The key feature of these meatballs is the incorporation of onions that have been cooked down with baking soda and then flavored with sherry vinegar. This was something that I came up with before I had ever traveled to Russia, but to my surprise it turned out to be a well-known trick in central Russia, although not with sherry vinegar. It's a holiday dish prepared by grandmothers and served with potatoes fried in butter, some pickled mushrooms, a dab of sour cream, and minced fresh dill. The combination with a good beer will haunt your memories forevermore. The balance of flavors is absolutely divine. Yeah, I've got a typical pork roast, at least the way they are in Russia. You can see I've got this giant wad here on the end that if you're making pork chops out of this will just be nasty and tough. So first thing is just take this big piece off. This is going to be used for the meatballs. And we got a bunch of other little tissues here that are not especially good because they're going to be stringy and tough too. So we take all of these off. That's the end piece. This is also no good. On the other side, again, just going to be stringy and tough. Let's a little bit more of this. A little bit more. Shave it down. Okay. Now, if we're going to actually prepare pork chops from this, we've got another issue here. Well, this one's pretty square on this side. This side's not. This is going to have to be squared off anyway, so we can cut this off. Now we've got a piece of pork here we can use for something else. It's got a little bit too much fat on this end, so we'll also come in here, cut some of this off. Okay, so we've got these pieces here. These are going to go. Now we've got a lot of pieces of pork here already. This is quite a bit. Now we're going to turn our attention to the chicken. This is for another application. This will be for something else. Now I've got two big boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and we're doing the same thing. We're gonna butcher these fairly aggressively. We're going to get rid of all the parts that are anything but tender. Get rid of all the tendons and everything else because we're gonna have really nice pieces of chicken left over this way, and we don't have to feel bad about having wasted some because the rest of it's going to go into these meatballs. So feel around, make sure you get any tough parts. I actually got a piece of bone in here. Yeah, it's Russian butchery for you. They like to cut everything up with an axe, so they leave little splinters of bone and things. Okay, here's the sort of chicken breast you want to end up with after you've cleaned it up. This will be for another application. Also, all of these scraps are going to go in with the sausage, or the meatballs, really. And I just weighed it. We ended up with about 400 grams of pork and 400 grams of chicken. And I just got to go through and cut the larger pieces up so that they will go through the meat grinder. Okay, we've got the pork that's been cubed up. Now I'm going to put in 100 grams of onion that's coarsely chopped, about a tablespoon of lemon juice, and just salt, and mix this up. And also some pepper. Once we've got all that mixed, and put some plastic over it, refrigerate it for a little while. A couple of hours is good. One important difference in this is to not use stale bread that you've ground into breadcrumbs, but actually take fresh bread and cook it, preferably with a fan on at a low temperature for an hour or two to dry it out. Remember, there's 100 grams of onion that were left with the meat to marinate. I've also got 200 grams of onions that's also going to be cooked with baking soda. Into a hot pan, we add about an ounce of oil, about 30 milliliters of oil, something like that. Here are the onions you just saw, the 200 grams of onions. One-half teaspoon of baking soda. Three-quarters of a teaspoon of salt. And 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. And we're going to cook these slowly. The heat is on 5 out of 1 to 10. And stir them around, of course. After just about 3 minutes, he sees a lot of liquid here because of the catalytic action of the baking soda, and then also because of the salt helps draw out moisture, so does the sugar. See, after 5 or 6 minutes, it's just swimming in liquid. Nothing like when you cook onions the usual way. You don't get this sort of reaction at all out of them. And after about 10 minutes, you see it's starting to turn into this homogeneous goop. It's very little structure of the onion even visible anymore. And it's darkening and turning even more yellow. You keep cooking it. And this is what it looks like after 15 minutes. You can see it's almost a gel now. You can't even tell it was an onion anymore. Now I'm going to turn the heat off. It's still on the burner, but I'm going to turn the heat off, and I'm going to add that cherry vinegar. And it's going to foam up because it's now neutralizing the baking soda that was in there. We're just going to stir this around a little bit, let it cool down. And this part is done. We'll use this in a few minutes. So you can see how brown it is and goopy. There's no hint that there was ever solid onion in there. It's completely broken down. Now you get this little pot of goop here that was the onion, and you need to taste this. It's been, let's see, what is it? It's been about 3 hours now. The meat's chilled, and the flavors are all absorbed. Now this is all. Here you see the amount of onion that was not ground up into this. This was left behind. So we have the ground meat here now. Now we're going to work with a new bowl. We've got the lovely breadcrumbs that were made from fresh bread. There's some fairly good sized chunks in it. That's a good thing. You actually want that. It's not like fine breadcrumbs. You want some variety in the sizes. And we have the 200 grams of onion that were cooked down, of course. Now we're going to combine these. Okay, once it's completely combined, now we put this in with the meat and mix this all together. You don't want to overmix it, but you want it to be pretty homogeneous. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold it up. You're going to run the edge of the spatula through it like it was a knife. Fold it over again. You want to not compress it down. That's the key here, because otherwise you get tough meatballs. And also you don't want to don't just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. Once you see that there's no large streaks of that seasoning mix in it anymore, you're done. So now this needs to be refrigerated and stored a little bit longer before we actually start making the meatballs and cooking them. Got the meat out of the refrigerator now. I've got a couple of plates here. I'm going to sprinkle with some flour to keep the meatballs from sticking to the plate. And then begin forming the meatballs just like any other meatballs. And from this you should have about 20 meatballs. Then dust the top of them with some flour and kind of roll them around a little bit on the plate so that they pick up flour on all sides. Okay, now they're ready for cooking. Do them in 2 batches because once you get the initial slight browning on each side, then you start to move them off to the edge of the pan so that they cook evenly, because the hot spot's in the center, of course, and the edges will cook more evenly. And you push them up against the sides a bit as you're going along, and then it's just a matter of patience. Don't try to cook them very quickly. The heat's on 7, but around the edge of the pan it's not going to be as hot, so they're going to take quite a few minutes to brown thoroughly. And every few minutes, give them a little rotation like this, keep them going. And after a few minutes, they've got a pretty good brown going on all sides here. You can transfer these back to another plate and then start the next batch. And when you have the second batch browned to about the same level as the first batch, then you can add the first batch back in. I'll turn the heat down just a little bit to like 5. Satisfy this evenly spaced. Put some water in and put a lid on it and let them steam here. Let them simmer at low heat. It has been 3 minutes now. I'm going to open these up and sprinkle on dried dill. After 2 more minutes, I'm going to remove the lid, and we'll mix them around a little bit to make sure that dill is evenly incorporated. And they're basically done. Now just transfer them to a plate.
Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.